This was a film everybody packed in to see in 1956, and I'm back with my co-host Brent Phillips, author of a new biography of the man who directed the film, Charles Walters. And I might add, the last film both directed and choreographed by Chuck Walters. Now, with the success he had, Chuck Walters, with High Society and all these other films we've been talking about every Friday this month, it still stuns me that he's not better known today.
Yes, I think during his career, he was better known.
He was better known in Hollywood, certainly.
Absolutely. Hedda Hopper was a great friend of his, and she plugged him as much as she could. And all of the trade papers would write about him and his films. And since so many films like High Society, being the 5th highest grossing film of the year, his name was rattled about. I just think, you know, over time, there was less and less discussion about him. In those days, people really weren't rushing off to see this director's film or that director's film. They were going to see a Frank Sinatra and a Bing Crosby and a Grace Kelly.
Yeah, because they didn't really know William Wyler then either, or Billy Wilder necessarily. For years, he'd been this great competition, not between the two of the guys, but from the public as to who was the best singer.
Yes.
Sinatra or Crosby. So the idea of the two of them in one movie together, it's kind of when, like, Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire danced together in the Ziegfeld Follies.
Exactly.
You know, got these two towering talents together.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out Sinatra and Crosby adored each other and were great friends, but it was the public lining up to see the two of them together as well was a big deal.
Yeah, and they Frank Sinatra made it a point. You know, they would have this kind of friendly rivalry on radio shows and stuff, which was all very scripted and very funny. But deep down, Frank Sinatra said, you know, the idol of his youth was Bing Crosby. So I think Frank was also thrilled to be doing a film with Bing Crosby. And then, of course, it came time they had to sing together, and that became sort of a real, what would these two megastars in the musical world, what would they sing together? And that's where Saul Chaplin really searched and searched and searched until he found the perfect song for them, and it was the song called Well, Did You Ever? What a Swell Party This Is.
So tell about this.
Yes.
That's such an interesting story.
Well, basically, they couldn't find any song for the two of them. They knew this is why people were, as you said, lining up around the blocks to see these two people, and yet there really was no good song because there really wasn't that much of a reason for them to sing the song.
Right.
Basically, they were in a library, and there was a society party happening, and they were kind of getting schnockered a little bit and having a grand time. So Saul Chaplin kept on looking and looking. Finally, he was going through some old books of Cole Porter music, and he came across Well, Did You Ever? What a Swell Party This Is. And he said, that has to be it. And then he looked at the top of the lead sheet, and it said that it had originally been written for Dewberry Was a Lady on Broadway, and the people who introduced it was Betty Grable and Charles Walters.
Yeah.
It was their big song of that film. And of course, when Chuck heard that they were going to be doing this, Chuck was basically overjoyed. He said, this is where your past can come back and haunt you. But he was very happy to bequeath that song to them. And then he created, Chuck Walters created one of the most, another iconic sequence in MGM musical history, that number. And that was, you know, Chuck working with Sinatra and Crosby to really make sure that that number was going to play to its best advantage.
Yeah. Well, moving on. In a few moments, Brent and I will be back to bring you another film from the portfolio of director Charles Walters. This one's from 1955 and stars Leslie Caron and Michael Wilding.
Tonight on TCM's Friday Night Spotlight, Leslie Caron transforms herself in the class slipper. Then Debbie Reynolds gives Frank Sinatra a matrimonial ultimatum in The Tender Trap. And jump into the pool with Esther Williams in Easy to Love.